Welcome to Minnesota Vikings Chat, the podcast of MinnesotaVikingsChat.com. I'm your host, David Erickson, the publisher of Minnesota. Joe Webb, everybody's favorite backup quarterback until last year when he didn't make it in the playoffs. But Joe Webb is going to be switched back to wide receiver. So you remember we drafted him as a wide receiver. Decided to try him at quarterback. Now that we've got Castle as a backup, they're switching him back to wide receiver. And so it's tough to judge how this is going to play out. I think Joe Webb, having played quarterback, is probably better prepared than a lot of wide receivers for understanding the position, having played quarterback. So quarterback, you need to know the entire playbook. You need to know every aspect of a given play, what the roles of each player on the team, on the offense are, what they're doing in order to make that play work. I don't think a lot of wide receivers really understand offensive plays and defenses as well. So as a quarterback, you need to understand both the offensive play and how to read defenses, right? Now, Webb probably wasn't very prepared for doing that, but he's better prepared than a lot of wide receivers who haven't played quarterback. He did play quarterback in college. A lot of wide receivers I played with just can't read defenses. It drives you nuts. I play wide receiver. I play quarterback. When you expect you're playing quarterback, you expect your wide receivers to understand the opening that a defense is presenting to them. When they have a gap in their defense that the receiver should recognize and run to in order to gain yards, because that's obviously where the play should go. When they don't recognize it, drives you nuts. So that's my touch football. Obviously, NFL is a lot different. You've got precise routes, timing routes, but running your routes properly is another aspect of that. So do receivers go right up to a defender and sit down, essentially allowing themselves to be covered? Do they give themselves enough cushion on an out route so that the defender can't get to the ball when it's thrown, even if it's a timing route? Do they not recognize the cushion that a receiver is giving off the line? Can they find soft spots in zone coverage? Do they recognize zone coverage? Do they even look when they're open? So these are a lot of things that you come to playing quarterback. You recognize the deficiencies in receivers' games just based on how they react to a defense. Having had that experience, then Webb should be better prepared to play the position of wide receiver. The question is whether he's capable. And given the few times that the Vikings have incorporated trying to throw the ball to Webb, I'm not convinced that he's capable of playing the position. Does he have the hands to catch the ball? Does he need to look at the quarterback in order to catch the ball? Can he track the ball in space? Can he run routes properly? I mean, there's a whole host of things that you need to know whether he can play football or play the position or not. And I went back and looked at video footage to see if I could find any of him playing receiver in college, and of course there wasn't. The one video out there of him jumping over 7 stacked dummies is impressive, but gives you no insight into whether he can play receiver. There's a highlight reel of 2008 University of Alabama at Birmingham highlights that shows a lot of footage of Webb carrying the ball out of the backfield from the quarterback position and doing a fine job of it, but no footage of him catching the ball. So you don't know, based on there's no real footage to determine what kind of a receiver he's going to be. I'm skeptical. The Vikings carried 6 receivers on the roster in 2012 last year. If he does miss, so his competition is Greg Jennings, Jerome Simpson, Jarius Wright, Kadero Patterson. Those guys you got to assume are going to be on the roster, right? Greg Childs is somebody who's coming off 2 blown knees and may not be ready for the regular season, but seems to I think the Vikings have a lot of confidence, or not a confidence, but a lot of they think he's got a lot of talent. The question is whether he can come back from that type of an injury. If he's there, he might be somebody that they try to sneak onto the practice squad, or maybe he makes the team. Who knows? But potential big talent there with the size you like in a receiver too. And then the remaining cast that Webb is going to really be competing with is Stephen Burton, Chris Summers. Burton was on the roster last year. Chris Summers, practice squad guy, Rodney Smith, Adam Thielen, Eric Highsmith, Lamarck Brown, undrafted free agent guys. And so let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that Webb does make the roster as like the fifth or sixth receiver. He's going to have to contribute a lot on special teams. So he's super fast. You could envision him as a gunner on special teams coverage on kick coverage. I'd experiment with him as a holder on field goals and extra points, because that gives you the option of doing some fakes or putting the fear of God into people with needing to cover Joe Webb in case the Vikings do a fake field goal, and he can juke, and he's got moves to make people miss and get in the end zone. And then finally, imagine him with his speed and he's shown that in the preseason that he can return a kick or two as a short man on kick returns, assuming that you've got Darrell Patterson as your deep man. On kick returns, I wouldn't put him on punt returns. I don't think he's capable of that. But as a kick returner, then you can't kick short to avoid Patterson, right? Because you've got Webb, who's got just as fast speed. Could be interesting. We'll see how that plays. I'm going to wrap this podcast, and so make sure that you go to MinnesotaVikings.com, MinnesotaVikingsChat.com/subscribe to subscribe to the email update if you don't want to miss any of these podcasts. Get them delivered directly to your inbox at MinnesotaVikingsChat.com/subscribe. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/MinnesotaVikingsChat. Follow us on Twitter at Twitter.com/MNVikingsChat, and use the Vikings Chat hashtag to talk Vikings online. So we know that you're talking about Vikings, especially during game days. And subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of these podcasts. Until next week, go Vikings.